Hello and welcome to this episode of the Gîte podcast when I talk to Neil and David from Domaine de la Banne near Belvès in the Dordogne. Now, we talk about the challenges that have been heaped upon them this year and also the biggest coincidence ever. Not particularly good one, but anyway, I think you'll find it quite amusing. And we talk about their revenue, their occupancy, the costs of running the Gîte, the chaotic tax changes over the past couple of years, what it's like working and living together, reviews and how to respond to them, and why happy guests are so very important. So I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Gite podcast. Brought to you by Gite Guru.
Well, welcome Neil and David to the Gîte podcast. It's so nice to have you on finally.
Hello, it's been a while, yes.
As well as having been clients quite a few years ago, we are actually best friends. We might be a little rude to each other during this podcast, but you both have a beautiful Gîte just outside Belvès. This year, quite a few things have happened outside of your control, haven't they? Quite a lot has gone wrong. And I'm really interested to hear about how you have coped with what I have termed as your annus horribilis. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your Gîte so that our wonderful listeners who are walking their dogs on Wimbledon Common and doing the washing up can picture your amazing place.
So we have a Gîte in a small commune called Sajola, which is just at the foothill of Belvès. It's a 3-bedroom Gîte, all with ensuite bathrooms. We're setting 7 hectares of land. We've only got a couple of neighbours nearby. It's a very small commune, Sajola. There's only 300 inhabitants in the entire commune. So what it does provide is really good access to all the kind of local attractions and the attractions that people come to enjoy during the holiday season. So,
and you can walk into Belvès.
Belvès is a plus beau village de France.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like for tourists, it's just the most beautiful, characterful place to go. So you've got 3 ensuite bedrooms and the bathrooms are beautiful, aren't they? With travertine marble and it's all super duper. And what else have you got in the Gîte?
So there's an open plan kitchen, lounge, dining area. There's a balcony that we added onto it's setting an old barn. Some of the work had been done before we moved in and we just added extra things. So we added a balcony onto it.
The balcony is quite big. It's a proper kind of big terrace almost outside, isn't it? Where you can sit and eat. And
a nice seating area outside on the balcony.
Yeah. With a fantastic view because you're on the first floor of the countryside in front of you.
Yeah. And then after much debate, we added a pool. So our house, we live next door. So we're on site. Our house already had a pool when we moved here. We decided to invest in a pool that was private for the Gîte, which actually has been a really important asset in terms of attracting people to the property.
But surely it would have been much cheaper just to let your guests use the pool with you. So what was the decision making around that?
The location of our pool would make it probably a bit inconvenient for the Gîte guests to have to walk all the way around and utilize our pool, and also meant we wouldn't be able to use our pool.
And also it meant that guests have their own privacy. They have their own private area. So the kind of layout of the property means that although we're adjacent to the Gîte, the property and the land are big enough for us all to kind of enjoy it and not be on top of each other. And also alongside the pool, there is an old stone chicken coop that we have converted into a laundry area and keeps the outdoor games in there. It's got an additional toilet there, so that's poolside. People don't have to wander backwards and forwards to the Gîte to have to go to the bathroom. And then there's a kind of covered area attached to the chicken coop, which provides a great summer kitchen, dining area. And I think when we first moved here, because we moved here in 2017, we were very excited and we had all of these plans of what we wanted to do when we got here. But there was a delay in us moving in. We realized that actually the work people that we needed to do the jobs were all fully booked for the following year. What do we do now? Interestingly, a few people said to us, don't rush into doing the work straight away. Understand the property for yourself, enjoy it, get familiar with it, work out where the sun rises, where it sets, work out where is the best location for any of the things that you want to add to the pool. So the Gîte opened in 2019 and the pool wasn't added until 2020. So for the first year, we had we were late opening, but we had a few summer guests and they were using our pool. And that made us think, actually, how do we create greater privacy for people? And COVID hit. So then there was the challenge of me in a flat panic about, we're going to run out of money. We're not getting any gas, and we've invested in this ground that's got no work being done to it. So there was a lot of kind of having to readjust our plans from when we first arrived. And in fact, I'm really glad that we didn't rush into doing things when we first arrived here.
In a way, you're really lucky then, because you had almost a blank canvas and you had a budget. So you were able to design a space, not for yourselves, but specifically for the guests.
Yeah.
And did you make decisions in the design of the Gîte that you perhaps wouldn't have made for your own home?
Because it was such an open plan space, what we didn't want to lose was that sense of space. So it was how many bedrooms could we add in and still give people that sense of openness? And particularly adding the balcony, how could we extend that space from the lounge dining area onto the balcony with these amazing double opening French doors?
We found it really easy that we designed a space for guests that we were never going to live in.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed that. I think your point about privacy being really important, both for the guests and for you. Now, you mentioned the attic above the Gîte, and that is one of the areas that has caused you quite a few headaches this year.
So I think, just to kind of set the context, for us, you start the year, you've kind of got through the Christmas and New Year period, and you're starting to think ahead about actually what work do I need to do. There's a lot of garden for us to maintain. And for us this year, our first booking was in Easter, and we haven't had an Easter booking. So that was kind of end of April for 2 weeks, which we were really excited about. Again, when you're opening the Gîte, and I'm sure you're the same, you kind of, for me, there's a level of nervousness of, what are we going to find that's not working? It's been closed up for a few months. What's not going to work? So you try and create as much space and time to deal with any unforeseen circumstances. Unfortunately for us, there were unforeseen circumstances that just nobody could have planned for. So we had a month of bee swarms in May. So our first guests had been and gone. And not long after that, we had a massive swarm got into our own attic. And we were told by our friendly neighborhood beekeeper, there's about 6,000 to 7,000 bees in that swarm. And they were getting into our attic.
In your house, next to the Gîte.
So that was the kind of first, this black cloud descended. And we ran to our neighbor, Danny, and he is a beekeeper, and he dropped everything and came instantly to deal with that particular swarm and managed to successfully remove it and take it to his garden. And they live happily in his garden now, feeding off our flowers as well as his.
Brilliant.
But whilst that was happening, we saw another collection of bees entering the Gîte attic. And Danny kindly went up there and couldn't see anything. They didn't seem to be getting in, so assured us that there wasn't a problem. But then, for days afterwards, these bees kept appearing and were desperately trying to get into the attic. And obviously we're thinking, we can't have that in there while we've got guests, if they are in there.
They were in there.
And then every day we'd be up and down a ladder into the attic, trying to see where these bees were trying to get in and where they were going if they were getting in. And then we were nervously tapping on the boarding, and this trail of bees appeared from underneath the boards.
So the bees were actually in the floor of the attic, meaning above the ceiling of the Gîte.
Yeah. So we went back to Danny, and he came and had a look. So he told David to go and get some expandable foam so he could start sealing the gaps around the edge of the roof where they were actually getting in. The bees there didn't seem to be that many, but he was concerned that maybe they were in the process of creating a nest.
So in between all of this, you had guests coming and going.
Yes, and they were very understanding in terms of us getting access to the roof. There was another swarm getting into the attic further down from where it had been sealed. And sure enough, not long after that, another lot descended back into our attic behind the shutters, and we were able to get these small shutters open before they could get between the shutter and the glass pane. There's a beauty of living in rural Dordogne, and there are some things that you can plan for, and there are other things that you're just beyond.
And just explain for people who haven't got Gîtes, what's the stress or the anxiety that you feel at the time when you are waiting to see what a swarm of bees is going to do on your property?
Well, I suppose it would partly if they nested and were there permanently. The worry would be are the guests going to get stung? But also, if they're creating honey in the gap, it will eventually come through the ceiling or run down the walls. And then we'd have to close.
If it did require somebody taking a section of wall out or taking a section of the ceiling out.
Yeah.
So the last thing we needed was bulging the ceiling and being able to provide the local community with honey for the rest of the year.
In your welcome pack. So this all happened in kind of April, May time?
Yeah.
And then what happens?
The guests that were here during the bee period left. It was one of those times when we had a couple of days gap before we had another lot of guests arriving. You had nearly 48 hours to be relaxed in your changeover and just kind of work ahead of yourself and get on top of some jobs and not have the stress of a same day changeover. So we got a warning on our phones. There will be a storm at some point during the day.
From your insurance company?
Yes, from the insurance company. And quite often you get those warnings and they don't come to anything. We were busy in the Gîte, getting things ready. I'd come outside for something and I noticed over Belvès, which is sitting on a hill not far from here, this huge black cloud heading in our direction. So ran into David and said, we have to drop everything and get outside and get as much or as everything that's outdoor furniture, get with the pools, the umbrellas, get the lawnmower in, get our car into a safe place before this thing hit us. Well, we managed to get some in and then it hit.
It was the hailstorm like I've never seen before.
I mean, they were the size of small lemons, these hailstones. There was such a strong wind. We heard this enormous crack. The tree was literally being bent and we thought, that's going to fall on the Gîte. We just looked at each other. It was the only comedy moment of that evening, quite honestly, because I was screaming and we've got to get in the house and get the shutters shut. And he's going, how the hell are we going to get in the house? And there were two old beds kind of lying on the floor next to us. And I said, you put one on your head and I'll put one on my head. We ran
across the
courtyard and managed to get in the house. So this
didn't last for, 30, 40 minutes?
30, 40 minutes.
So people might expect to have storms in the winter, but actually you got hit at the end of June. And I remember about 8 years ago, we got hit at the beginning of July really badly. So it's in the middle of your season.
Yeah.
It's not in the winter when you're shut up and all the garden furniture's inside. It's when the place is meant to be looking immaculate and you've got guests arriving. Yeah. What was the damage to the property?
We let it, when it subsided, we went out. The electric shutter on our cover on our pool was shredded. There were just holes in it.
You've got like a hard slat cover on your pool, but you'd had it closed. And so the hail had fallen on it and smashed the majority of the slats?
Yeah.
At least well, over 50%.
Then our pool heater had just exploded. The sides were hanging off. The lid was off.
This is the heat exchange pump that looks a bit like an air conditioning unit that was near the pool.
There was a big pine next to it that was huge that had just been snapped at the base. Fortunately, the way that it fell didn't block the driveway, but other trees kind of were taken down. And around our garden, plants were ruined. And then we moved round to the Gite area with fear, really, thinking, my word, we've got guests arriving tomorrow. Our season really is then back to back. What are we going to find? There wasn't any damage to the building, but our swimming pool, the electric shutter there, that was decimated. The pool heater had gone. We have a piece of kit in the pool house that's an electrolysis machine that converts the salt into natural chlorine. But during the storm, the electricity kept fizzing, basically, and that had been blown. By the time all the assessment of the insurance was done, it was 30 grand's worth of damage done in terms of the pool.
But you had this horrific thing happen to you. And actually in Belvès, I think there were 70 houses that had damaged roofs. And the mayor tried to get the government to say it was a national disaster so that they could get extra funding. Yeah. So, I mean, this was a major, major storm. So all of that happened to you whilst you were trying to get the place ready for guests. But that was only the first part of the kind of stress and anxiety that this storm caused you, wasn't it?
Yeah. We had to make some decisions pretty quickly because, like I say, we had regular guests coming the next day. But beyond that point, we were then into back-to-back. We don't know how the insurance company are going to react to this. We don't know whether they're going to pay. We don't know when equipment can be replaced. It's the height of summer. Pool companies are busy. The pool company came out quite quickly, so we knew the level of the cost of that and also how long it might take. And bearing in mind, come August, so this is beginning of July, come August, very little happens. It's French holidays. We're with the same insurance company, but we had to register one claim for the business because that was our business insurance. And then we had to register another claim for our house. And then they send out 2 separate assessors. So there's a gap there. There was then a whole wrangling with the assessor as to whether we weren't insured for a swimming pool because the insurance company had lost our documentation. The storm is the storm. It did a lot of damage. It creates a lot of work. But when you're battling with an insurance company and you're also trying to run your business, that just makes the stress levels, for me, go through the roof.
We could arguably, with the business insurance, have closed and claimed from the insurance company loss of business income.
Paid your guests back. They would have had a refund, but no holiday.
Yeah, and that was the problem. Not only for returning guests, but new guests as well. They booked a holiday, looking forward to it.
So we made the decision that I should contact initially all of the guests to say, we have made a decision, we're not going to close. However, please be prepared. There's a level of decimation around the property in terms of the garden. It takes a while to get sorted.
It's like God has picked up your garden and shaken it and then put it back down again, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, we were having to think ahead. So this was, end of June, beginning of July. We don't need a pool heater for guests during July and August, but we do need to start putting that on in September. August was coming, and therefore there wasn't going to much happen during August because it's French holidays. So we had July. Can we get a pool heater before September? The pool company, despite everything they were trying to do, we can't guarantee when this was going to get done.
When did you manage to get the guest pool?
We were able to keep it open. But we were having to do a lot of additional work in terms of maintaining it because of the damage that had been done.
And what about the cover itself? Because that had been smashed to bits.
Yeah.
Could you continue using it?
Well, because the cover rolls up above the level of the water, it's not in pool. It meant that when you open and close it, it meant that the water that got in via the holes into the blades and therefore weighed the cover down drained out. You compare that with our in-pool cover, the weight of the water meant that the pool was the cover was so heavy, we couldn't open it at all because it was putting stress on the motor.
Which you had already had to buy a new motor.
Yeah, we'd already paid for that.
At 5,000 euros.
So there were kind of some real practical decisions, as well as not getting answers from the insurance company. In the meantime, you're dealing with arrivals, departures, check-in, check-out, changeover. You've got workmen and women, insurance companies coming to assess damage whilst guests are here. And there were times when we sat and had a glass of wine in the evening. I said, did we do the right thing keeping it open? Would we? But that's not our philosophy. We were committed to trying to deliver what people had paid for and to give people the kind of holiday that they were hoping to have.
No doubt they really appreciated that.
Yeah, yes, they did. They did. When we look back on kind of people's experiences this year and what amazing holidays they've had, I'm glad that we did that.
Yeah. And virtually all of the guests understood, I think, the anxiety and stress you were under. But there was one family who didn't really understand what was going on and who made your lives quite difficult for their stay.
They were challenging.
There are some real benefits from living on the same site as your Gîte. I'm glad we were here because there was a lack of respect taking place around our property. We were here to deal with those issues because if not, we'd have turned up on changeover day and there'd have been an almighty amount of work for us to have done. But I think one of the downsides was, particularly in terms of the way these holiday makers behaved, was they started to make us feel uncomfortable in our own home. And that was quite difficult to deal with.
After all these years of you accepting guests, is this the first time that you've been made to feel slightly uncomfortable in your own home?
I would say so. Yeah. We've been, we've had the most amazing guests.
And that is part and parcel of it is other people enjoying the environment we've created that we live in.
I think,
and appreciating it.
yeah, and people being, recognizing that we live here as well as it's them having a holiday. The place is big enough for us to kind of lead our own lives. We're not on top of each other. But I think on this occasion, from the moment of their arrival, there was a sense of entitlement. And that was quite challenging. Now, absolutely, people are entitled to the holiday that they paid for. They're entitled to the product that you've promoted. They're entitled to a great level of service and hospitality. But when it comes to issues around trust, to respecting your...
And respect.
Yeah.
And also issues of safety. We have a responsibility as business owners to manage those situations. And some people, their attitude is, we've paid for it, we can do what we want. And I know one of your other guests, Susie, who's also, we're also friends with, she talked about the issue of trust and about that being a two-way process. And I completely agree with that. You trust guests. We're not big on rules or, you can and you can't do. We're not here to police people's behaviors. But
you're big on common sense.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And one of the main, one of the only rules is pool safety, making sure that the pool is covered when there's no one there. And they didn't seem to think that applied to them.
No.
Because it's not only about their safety, but if a neighbour has their grandchild over and the grandchild comes onto your property and falls in the pool, it's your responsibility for not having covered the pool.
We're completely open. The pool isn't fenced in, but it's got a security cover for protection.
This group arrived nearly an hour before arrival time and presented themselves. We're hot, sweaty. David's with the cleaner, still making beds. I'm finishing the outdoors. You're trying to get the place as pristine as possible.
For them.
So that people go, wow, this is amazing, which a lot of our guests do. And when somebody turns up that early, you're thrown. It throws you off track. But an early arrival that's presented of, we should now have access. Actually, there's been a lot of communication beforehand, and the arrival times have been really clear. The way that we operate here, we welcome guests when we get ourselves showered and changed. They went off to the supermarket. We managed to get things done. And then we welcome people properly with a drink and kind of show them around the property. And during the walk around, there was a question came up that was about safety. We are in the height of an incredibly hot summer.
Everywhere's tinder dry.
And about lighting fires outside. And as soon as the question was asked, I thought, oh, I think I know who you are. So I explained we don't let people light fires at any time of the year. So we kind of dealt with that, and there was a level of kind of confrontation to some extent in terms of how we were managing the thing and being told how we should manage the place. And you have to walk away from that and go actually very calmly, professionally.
But even so, it does then make you sort of question yourself a little bit and feel, actually, is this us?
Yeah.
But then in terms of the track record going back of what other guests have said, in your deep down that it isn't. But
you do question a little bit. There is a very, very big coincidence here because they had previously stayed with us. Not only did they light a fire next to a field of corn in August, and we then were put in the position of having to go and put the fire out without trying to ruin their evening. Also, something happened in one of the bedrooms and bathrooms where it was quite obvious that some violence had been used. There was a door off the hinges. And so we were then in the position of, it's not just our safety here about whether you're going to cause the fire, but we actually think perhaps there's an issue with the safety of one of the guests. So they were very difficult people. They put us in positions that we have never been in.
Yeah.
We had to deal with circumstances that we'd never had to deal with. And yet they were very well educated, extremely well off.
Yeah. And I think that, for us, it came to a point where I don't want to actually go outside today just in case I'm going to end up being faced with another situation. Many years ago, when I left school, I went and trained for 4 years to be a hotel manager. So in the hotel industry then was very much a kind of upstairs, downstairs mentality. And one of the things that was drummed into us at college was a kind of mantra of the guest is always right. I don't actually subscribe to that view. because I
No.
think there are moments where you have to intervene, and we are business owners and we have legal responsibilities, particularly when it comes to people's safety. And the guest isn't always right. That doesn't mean you should get into a confrontation, but it's just about how you professionally and calmly manage that. And
So looking at all these things, so bees and a storm and having to deal with insurance and then having challenging guests, what were the mechanisms that you used to cope with those things? Because I can imagine by the end of August, you were probably ready to just go to bed and never come out again.
We support each other and we bounce ideas off each other and we challenge each other. But also, we have got a group of friends like yourselves and like other Gite owners who you can talk to about things. Otherwise, it feels like it's just you.
when there are just two of you working together all of the time and living together, you can end up just going around in circles. And sometimes you need an external kind of perspective and somebody else to kind of nudge you in a different direction or to say, have you thought about? So those networks were really important. And with those guests that we had issues with, that was even more important when it came to them giving their review, because we needed to work out a way that we could respond to that. And we wrote it and rewrote it and shared it with people. It would have been easy to fire something off, but do we respond? And how can we craft this? So
that in itself is such a tricky question, because they don't deserve a response. And yet they have publicly commented on your product.
Yes.
I actually advise you not to respond publicly, but you decided to, and I completely understand why.
It was finding a way that we could respond that didn't get into kind of tit for tat, that was that acknowledged their comments, but equally framed it back to them in a different way that was positive. I think you can, as a Gite owner, you can kind of be held over a barrel around reviews, because it's not a threat, but it's that thing at the back of your mind thinking, what are they going to say? And that's going to be in the public domain. And how do I respond to that?
And how many bad reviews have you had in the 6 years you've been open?
That's the only one.
Yeah. So it is a threat hanging over all of us. And yet, fortunately, it doesn't really happen very often, does it? And how important were all of your lovely guests in you coping with this awful season?
Yeah, enormously. And a lot of them were prepared to listen, because we'd warned them that, we didn't know how quickly it was going to get things straight. They wanted to know what was our progress, and they listened. And again, I think even more so when you hear your guests having a whale of a time around the pool, and you hear the moments of laughter and people having late dinners into the in the evening, all of that feeds you, because you think this is what we wanted to achieve,
and this is what
What is so interesting about you two is the passion, and it really is a passion you have for giving the best product you can. And hats off to you that after a season like this, where so many things have gone wrong and your stress levels have just been off the charts, you have sat down and come up with a couple of ways that you want to improve the products. It's not just getting that being fed by the guests who are loving the place, but you obviously get fed by the pride you have in the decisions you've made around what you're offering. So there's one big project, really big project, an expensive project that you've come up with this winter.
Yeah. So air conditioning has been a bit of a theme for the last couple of years, because neither of us have been keen to install air conditioning. And we got we were the most vocal group. We got a group of lovely young people from Holland staying with us last year, and they came back again this year. We had the kind of repeated conversation about, it'd be great if we had air conditioning in the 2 bedrooms upstairs. No, it's not happening. It's not happening. Anyway, this year was so unbearably hot.
For a long period.
Yes, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. In the past, it's been sort of 2 weeks. It's been really bad, and it's been hot at other times, but not this year. It was hot and horrible for probably 8 weeks plus.
But then this year, we found that a number of our regular guests were saying to us, it's getting to the point where it's really uncomfortable in these bedrooms. And this is when I think you really do need to listen to your guests, because A, it's about their comfort, but also it's about doing some future proofing of your business for the, if these conditions are going to continue, then you need to start thinking, well, am I going to start to lose guests if I don't do something about this situation? We were doing a changeover there one day, and the rooms were still so hot and it was unbearable. And we made a decision that for next year, we will put air conditioning in the 2 bedrooms upstairs. But we've worked with a company to look at what's the most environmentally friendly solution to that in terms of getting high energy efficient units. We've also, this year, we've had solar panels put in, and we've added an EV charger to the property this year as well, which guests can use. And we've also got our own EV car now. But air conditioning was that was the last decision. And we kept going round and round in circles about this and thinking, actually, it's really important that people have a good night's sleep and that they're comfortable at night.
We're becoming like the south of France now, aren't we?
We are,
in the Dordogne.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you have to be that flexible and that adaptable.
And I've got some quick fire questions for you now. When is your season then, normally? Which months?
We're open all year round, but really our season only starts
May normally.
Beginning of May, and has run through now till mid-October.
And what's your revenue? What's a kind of average year from your Gîte?
Over the last 3 years, I was looking at the figures. So over the last years, we've averaged 42,000 euros.
Brilliant. And from how many weeks is that?
On average,
19.
about 19 weeks, 18, 19
Fantastic.
weeks.
What are your biggest costs?
The pool, in terms of the opening and closing and some level of maintenance in a normal year. It's about 1,500 to 2,000, I think.
Yeah.
Our laundry costs, but we don't send all of our laundry to the laundry. We do our own towels and pool towels. And that for the last couple of years has been about 1,000 in the year.
Mm-hmm. It's not bad.
No, your utilities, we use a lot of electricity during the holiday season.
Well, hopefully the solar will offset that. A big chunk of that.
Business insurance and our annual subscription to Saw Days. You see that return on that investment through the number of inquiries that we get, or the fact that people have found us via Saw Days, particularly British people.
Exactly. Your accountants, how much do you spend?
It wasn't a huge amount.
Under 1,000?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yeah,
yeah,
because she just does our annual tax return.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got your cotisation, so but we benefit from being a rated Gite, so we're down to 6%.
What words would you use to describe the French taxation decision-making by the government in the past 3 years?
It's unbelievably chaotic. I wouldn't have believed that a government could make it so complicated to be self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
So many changes or undoing of tax rules, introduction of tax rules post-budget that that are implemented in the space of about 3 weeks,
and then cancelled 2 months later.
That has been a stress for the last couple of years, and without a lot of guidance from you and from Gite Guru, you've helped us find our way through that. But there comes a point where you say, I can't keep a track of this. I'll just deal with it once it's decided, because it could just easily get unmade as well as it has been made.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
We often say, I'm not running a multinational company or internet. I'm running a 3-bedroom Gite. So, yeah. And I think it's easy to get stressed by it. And there have been moments of real stresses around the uncertainty. But you just have to sometimes just take a step back and think, we'll work our way through this somehow.
It's unbelievable that entrepreneurs are French word.
Oh, that's brilliant. And who is your target group? So families, couples?
Yeah, we don't...
Groups of friends?
Take families with children over the age of 13. We find that we get a lot of families with older children and their partners. We get couples who are happy to just take the whole place.
How do you do that on platforms like Booking.com or Airbnb? How do you designate that you aren't accepting kids under 13?
You can identify the age group that you're prepared to take in terms of children.
Okay, perfect.
There's a kind of tick box on each of those to...
Exactly. Yeah. And what nationalities do you have staying?
It's predominantly British, but we have had quite a few French families or couples. This year we had our first lot of Americans, then Dutch,
Belgian,
Germans. We've had one group of Australians who stayed for about 2.5 weeks.
What are your top tips for people who are wanting to start out doing Gites?
Look at how much grass and how many trees you've got. Well, honestly, because I might have rethought if I'd have known that the thing was going to take so long here. Really do your research. talk to people, and even more so now in the ever-changing world of French taxation, actually really understand what the current landscape is and how that might change. It's also important to speak to Gîte owners.
I think if you're going to buy an existing Gîte, is very different than buying somewhere that you think will potentially be a good place to run a Gîte. I mean, it's existing. Obviously, you can see what the track record is and the type of people who've been attracted to it. If it's something new, which is what we did, that's then thinking about what people are going to like and enjoy, whether it's the property itself, whether it's the land around, how close are you to a small village or somewhere walkable? Is there a boulangerie nearby?
And the location is important. When we designed the Gîte, we also talked about what would we like to find in a property. So when you go on holiday, what are the things that you enjoyed, and and the facilities and what's available to you within the Gîte, and if you can within budget, tailor it in a way that means that people have got some added extras or added value.
And any regrets about moving to France and starting a Gîte?
No, not at all. Our careers have changed individually. We wanted an opportunity to do something together. Quite really appreciate you with what stresses are around 24/7 working and living.
That's a different podcast. That's a separate podcast.
I think in terms of what we wanted out of the life of moving to France, it's delivered. The Gîte can be really all consuming. The kind of pre-season setup is challenging and there's a lot to do. Closing down is a busy time as well. Once all guests have gone, what do we give back to ourselves in the quiet times?
The decisions you've made around the business, so deciding not to rent out for a certain number of nights anymore, or with your third bedroom, making choices around that. You're beginning now in year 6, 7 to make it really work for you.
Absolutely.
It's not just about trying to get it off the ground.
I think there are times when you think this has completely taken over our lives. We had really busy working lives before we came here, and part of the reason to come to France was actually wanted to slow that down a bit and have a different type of lifestyle, which we have an amazing lifestyle. But the Gîte, is the tail wagging the dog or is the dog wagging the tail? And it kind of, and I think being realistic about your season, are you just going to be an 8-week peak of summer? Is that what your season is, or can you extend it? Because those shoulder seasons are the real challenge to get people in. And then coming to a point where you say, well, actually, this is enough for us. We only want to do X number of weeks.
Good. And then finally, what does the future look like for your Gîte business? Do you see yourselves doing this for a long time still?
We've committed to do it for the next 5 years, at least. Because then we'll both be really pensionable age.
We'll get our UK.
I don't believe it.
We'll get our UK state pension. Whether we will, even within that 5-year period, whether we'll decide to consciously reduce our season and maybe do it for less number of weeks, that will be very much dependent on finances and also how much we're enjoying it still. We've already had conversations about, as we get older, because it's quite a physical work, there may be some things that we choose that either we can't do or we choose not to do ourselves.
And it sounds like it's been a really good bridge between giving up the serious careers in England and getting enough pension to live off. It's been this really nice 10, 11, 12-year bridge between the two.
Even if we do, say, 4 or 5 years' time, stop running the Gîte, as long as we're okay health-wise, we would probably stay here. We've got no desire at the moment, anyway, to move anywhere else.
Well, thank you both very, very much for giving us the wisdom of your experience and being so honest about the challenges and the unforeseen circumstances that have come your way this year. And all I can say is I wish you a very easy and quiet 2026, in which there are no flying insects and no hailstones, only lovely, lovely guests.
Thank you. It's been lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Gite podcast. Brought to you by Gite Guru.
Isn't it unbelievable what Neil and David have had to contend with in this past year? Different swarms of bees in Essex, an almighty storm, then having to deal with the insurance company and all the workmen and to sort out the problems from the storm, and then having challenging guests who don't really respect you or your property. But what shines through, I think, in everything that they do is their passion for offering the very best product that they can and ensuring that their guests have a wonderful holiday. Even with all the stress and with broken swimming pool covers and things, they have managed to achieve this. Having actually had the same challenging guests stay at our place and now at Neil and David, my heart really does go out to them. There is a very good reason for us having a blacklist of guests we would never have back. And unfortunately, we can't share that blacklist with all of the other Gîte owners in the Dordogne. So it was a great shame that they have had to experience what we did with these specific guests. Neil also told us that when he, a long time ago, studied at the hotel management school, that the mantra then was the guest is always right. And I think the guest is always our priority, but it's not necessarily the case anymore that the guest is always right. And I loved how they said that living and working together is fantastic, but that you also do need that external perspective from other local Gîte owners or perhaps your friends or even Gîte Guru, in order to help you. Sometimes you get in this kind of circular discussion and can't make a decision about something. And so having that external perspective is really handy. So get in touch with other Gîte owners in your area and strike up a friendship with them. Reviews. They had one bad review and there was a lot of discussion in our friendship group about how they should respond and if they should respond. A bad review is something in the public domain, and I get why you want to respond to that and put your side of the story, but it's a very tricky thing to do without fanning the flames. And you've got to ensure that people who don't know you at all, who are reading the review and your reaction, will read into it who you are and that you're actually fantastic, hospitable owners, as well as Neil and David being fed, their pride being fed by the fact they try and offer the very best product they can. It is also fed by the fact you have happy, lovely guests who really enjoy themselves, you know, hearing the cries of delight from the pool and hearing the clinking of glasses late into the night in the summer kitchen. It really does make you happy. And that's the other side of the story of when you have challenging guests. And I think through many of our episodes, a kind of theme is appearing of how absolutely important trust and respect are going both ways between owner and guest, and also safety. Safety is one of those things that we just assume that the guest is going to treat our place in a safe way, and the guest is going to assume that we have created a safe space for them. So trust, respect, and safety are really important. So I hope you have enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. If you haven't met us before, we're Gîte Guru. That's Frank and me, Rupert. We run our own gîtes, Le Mas and La Mazette, and when we left our careers in Amsterdam back in 2015 to run these gîtes full-time, they became our livelihood. We had to make the business work. It wasn't always smooth sailing, but through trial, error, and plenty of learning, we've built a 32-week season, 60% of which are returning guests. We started Gîte Guru to share what we've learned and to help others succeed too. So, if you're looking for free tips, insights, and inspiration, head to giteguru.com and subscribe to the Gîte podcast. For ongoing updates, behind-the-scenes posts, and relevant Gîte news, including tax changes and industry trends, follow us on Instagram at gite.guru. And if you're after more personalized support, we offer tailor-made advice around your business, your Gîte, its interiors, facilities, and the services you offer, and not forgetting communication and marketing, so telling the story of your Gîte and making it visible to your target groups. If you're interested, get in touch for a free Zoom chat about your property, plans, and how we could help you. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram at gite.guru. See you there!